Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something quite profound, I think, an aspect of personal transformation, especially around big body changes like weight loss that often gets overlooked.
Hmm.
We tend to focus on the numbers, right? The pounds lost, better lab
The
results.
tangibles.
Exactly. But what happens when that physical part hits its goal, but emotionally, psychologically, you're still kind of catching up?
That's precisely what we're digging into today. We're drawing from this really insightful collection called Field Notes from the Quiet Window.
Hmm.
It's compiled by a practitioner, Dan Hollis.
Okay.
And these notes, they really push back against that common idea that, once the weight's gone, everything's fine, the struggle's over.
That's just it.
Done. But often, it's actually the start of a whole different journey,
Mm.
a much deeper one, maybe.
That's a fascinating way to put it. So our mission here for this deep dive is really to unpack those internal shifts, the unexpected hurdles that pop up when your body changes faster than your sense of who you are. And what does that actually mean for, figuring out your identity, your emotional well-being day to day? It sounds like it's about looking beyond the obvious hunger
Hmm.
to figure out what you're really hungry for.
Exactly. What lies beneath the surface?
Okay, so let's start with Kate's story. She's 46, mother of three, couple of dogs, always got a book club book she hasn't quite finished.
Relatable.
Very. So she's 2 months into using semaglutide. That's a medication often used for appetite, blood sugar regulation.
Right.
And things looked good, 7 pounds down, minimal side effects, blood sugar improving.
Yeah.
On paper, it was all going exactly to plan,
Textbook success, almost.
almost. But here's where it gets really interesting for Kate. The big discovery wasn't the weight loss itself. It was, and this is her phrase, the craving that didn't show up.
Ah, okay. So the absence of something being the focus.
Precisely. And that absence really opened up this whole other dimension for her.
So tell us more about her relationship with food before this. Why was that missing craving such a big deal?
Well, the sources paint a picture of food being deeply, deeply woven into her emotional life.
Okay.
She apparently knew the rhythm of hunger like other people know hymns. It wasn't just about needing energy, it was her go-to mechanism for managing feelings.
That's coping strategy.
Totally. Afternoon slump, chips,
Mm.
feeling lonely, bread,
Mm.
even celebrating joy involved cake because she had this idea that if you didn't sweeten joy, it might not last. Food was this constant, reliable beat in her life.
Wow. So it was really fundamental to her daily experience.
Absolutely. And then came this moment. She told Dan Hollis she just walked past her pantry one day. And for the first time in maybe 20 years, she said, nothing reached back.
Nothing reached back.
Yeah, that automatic pull, that connection, it was just gone.
Yeah.
She said she felt like a ghost in her own kitchen.
That's a powerful image. And this is what Dan Hollis identifies as the quiet window.
That's the term he uses. He calls it that moment where the food stops answering your questions and the real ones start talking.
So the noise quiets down, and
Yeah.
then
The underlying stuff starts to surface. It's like this sudden, maybe even unsettling silence when those old coping mechanisms just vanish.
I can imagine that's incredibly disorienting. You'd think losing a craving is purely positive, but it sounds like for Kate, it wasn't just relief. It was maybe a kind of loss.
Definitely a kind of loss. The source mentions something folded in her chest, this feeling of grief.
Grief. Interesting.
Yeah, and this is a key insight from Hollis's work. We can grieve the loss of the thing that numbed us, even if that thing wasn't actually good for us long term.
Right. Even if it was causing problems.
Exactly. Kate wasn't missing the actual chips or bread. She missed the signal, the rhythm, the self-story that said, at least I know how to feel full.
Ah, the certainty of it, the familiarity.
Yes, she just felt weird, like the house was too quiet. Her own mind felt like a library after hours. It wasn't sadness exactly. She said, it's just that everything feels like truth now.
Wow. Yeah, everything feels like truth without the buffer.
So, if the obvious stuff wait, labs is just step one, where does Dan Hollis see the real work starting? When someone like Kate hits this quiet window?
Well, his real work starts right there, in that quiet. It's when the person starts hearing, maybe for the first time, the echoes of all the years they used food to muffle the deeper questions.
Okay.
So in that space, Dan helps them explore those really core questions. What am I hungry for when I'm not hungry? Who am I without the chase? What's left when the noise goes?
Those are big questions.
Huge.
Yeah.
They're the ones that were hiding behind the cravings.
And his approach isn't just telling people, you've got this, or giving them a motivational poster.
No, not at all. He talks about building scaffolding, not giving a pep talk.
Scaffolding. I like that.
Yeah, it's about not motivation, but momentum, not restriction, but recognition. He makes the point that the medication, the semaglutide, it doesn't solve emotional hunger. It just clears the runway so you can finally see what's trying to land.
Okay, so he helps them handle what's landing.
Exactly. He helps them build the support structure to navigate that arrival.
So what did that look like for Kate? How did the scaffolding play out day to day? Was it some big light bulb moment?
Actually, no. The source is clear. No breakthrough, no big epiphany.
Hmm.
It was much quieter. Just these small, consistent shifts. Like one Wednesday, she realized she hadn't snacked her way through feeling sad.
Okay.
Or a Thursday, she opted for tea instead of opening a second bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Or taking a walk on a Sunday because, and I love this quote, it felt like a conversation with her future self.
That's beautiful. A conversation with your future self, it really shows the internal shift, doesn't it?
It really does.
Mhm.
Small actions, but rooted in a different internal place.
And Kate's story isn't finished. The source makes that point strongly. She's not done. She's not fixed. She's not suddenly a new woman.
No quick fixes here.
No, but she's here in the quiet, listening. And maybe that's the key takeaway. If you're listening to this and you're walking through that kind of silence, maybe the craving didn't show up today and it feels
Yeah.
weird, unsettling even. You're not broken. You might just be starting to really hear yourself again. So welcome to the quiet window. You're definitely not alone in it.
That's a really important message.
Now let's shift gears a bit, but stay with this theme. Let's talk about Adrienne. Her story shows another side of this quiet window experience, something Dan Hollis calls identity lag.
Right. Another facet of the same phenomenon.
So Adrienne is 53, hadn't allowed a full-body photo in like 12 years. You know the type, drawer full of gold jeans and a heart full of hesitations?
Oh, I think many people recognize that feeling.
So like Kate, her physical journey on semaglutide was progressing. Months in, appetite down, knee pain less, clothes starting to fit differently, whispering instead of screaming, as the source puts it.
So physically, positive changes were happening.
Definitely. But her challenge was different. It wasn't the absence of a craving, but something else that came up. What was it about her experience that really illustrates this identity lag?
Well, again, it wasn't some dramatic event. It was
Mhm.
actually really mundane. She was just brushing her teeth one morning. Looked up at the mirror and she said she just didn't recognize the woman looking back.
Didn't recognize her, even though she knew it was her.
Exactly. Her face was thinner, lines were sharper, eyes seemed, as she put it, older and newer at the same time. She told Dan, I knew it was me, but I didn't feel like I belonged to her.
Wow. That sounds incredibly... Yeah, disorienting is the word that keeps coming up. You'd think seeing that reflection would feel like pure victory.
Right. That's the expectation.
But for Adrienne, it wasn't triumph. It felt more like a disappearance. Does Dan see this often, this disconnect between the physical reality and the internal feeling?
Oh, absolutely. That's why he coined the term identity lag. His whole point is that your body can change faster than your story.
Faster than your story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when that happens, the soul gets confused.
Mm.
The image changes, but the internal narrative, the sense of self, hasn't caught up yet.
That really flips the common idea on its head, doesn't it?
Hmm.
We always think the hardest part is losing the weight. But these notes suggest the real crisis is in the moments after. Why then? Why is that the crisis point?
Because that's the moment when the hunger fades, when the rituals dissolve, when the armor drops, and you're left standing there, unrecognizable, even to yourself.
Rubber drops.
Yeah, the external stuff you were fighting is gone or lessened, and suddenly you're face-to-face with yourself, but a version you don't quite know yet.
So what was Adrienne grieving then? Was it actually the weight or something else?
It wasn't the pounds themselves. She was mourning the version of herself who had carried them.
The old self.
Yes, the self who had known exactly how to manage a room with a joke, who knew intuitively which sweaters covered the most, which apologies worked best. She was, in her words, good at being her old self. She knew how to operate that way.
That makes so much sense. There's a comfort in the familiar, even if it's not ideal. So now she felt like...
Like a body in transition and a mind without a map. Totally lost.
How did Dan handle that? Did he try to cheerlead her out of it, tell her how great she looked?
No, thankfully not. He didn't rush in with those easy compliments like, you should be so proud, which can feel really invalidating when you're feeling confused.
Right.
He just listened. The source says he was like a mirror that doesn't ask questions, only returns what you're ready to see.
That's a delicate balance.
It is. And his key insight for her was crucial.
Yeah.
The weight loss.
Hmm.
That's just the clearing, just making space, the becoming, the actual process of integrating this new reality and building a new identity. That takes longer,
Yeah.
much longer, often.
So their work shifted. It wasn't about hitting more weight goals.
Not at all.
It became, as the source says, not on pounds, but on language. What does that mean, practically? Rewriting the names of things.
It means consciously changing the internal narrative, shifting perspective. So they started quite literally renaming things.
Like what? Can you give examples?
Sure. Things like shame became memory. Instead of living in shame, seeing it as part of her past story, control became curiosity, moving away from rigid rules toward exploring what felt right. Discipline became alignment, not forcing herself, but finding what felt authentic.
Oh, okay, I see. It's about changing the meaning attached to experiences and feelings.
Exactly. Reframing the inner dialogue from judgment to understanding, from restriction to, well, alignment.
And what happened for Adrienne as they did this work? How did she start to fill in her new frame?
Slowly, gently, she started to fill it not with food, not with fear, but with permission.
Permission.
Yeah, permission to not know who she was right now. Permission to be awkward in the in-between. Permission to build a new story without burning the old one down. It wasn't about erasing the past, but integrating it.
That sounds like real growth. Hard work, but real growth.
Definitely. And the source notes that the mirror didn't magically change, but the way she greeted it did. She stopped flinching. Maybe not smiling yet, but she stood there longer.
She could hold her own gaze?
Exactly. And that, as Gann would say, is something. It's progress.
It really is. And maybe you felt that too. Looked in the mirror and the shape felt closer, but the feeling wasn't there. Like your reflection was a stranger, not quite home.
Mm-hmm.
If that resonates, you're not alone either. You're just in that part of the story, maybe, where you learn how to belong to yourself again. In this quiet window, the old hunger might be gone or quieter.
But something more honest is trying to arrive.
Let it in, let it take its time. You're not behind schedule, you're just beginning.
Well said.
Wow. Okay, that was quite a deep dive today. We heard Kate's story about that quiet window opening up when the craving disappears, leaving space for, well, grief for the old numbing mechanism.
Yeah, the unexpected silence.
And then Adrienne grappling with identity lag, the body changing faster than the story, making her own reflection feel foreign. Both really show how physical change can just be the start, clearing the decks for much deeper self-discovery.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the core message from Dan Hollis's work really shines through both. True transformation goes way beyond the scale, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
It invites us to ask those tough questions when things get quiet. What am I hungry for when I'm not hungry? And maybe even bigger, who am I without the chase, without that constant striving or coping mechanism?
So the final thought for you, listening, as you go through changes in your own life, maybe physical, maybe career, relationships, whatever it is, what kind of scaffolding are you building for that emotional journey?
Mm-hmm. The internal support.
Yeah. And now that maybe some of the old noise in your life has faded, what deeper questions are you finally ready or maybe just willing to hear?